Richie Tozer's mouth didn't just like trash, it also liked dick. This is...
Oh no.
It spoilers.
This is savage.
It took me way too long to think of that. I'm kind of embarrassed. But hey, welcome to Spoilers. It Chapter 2 edition, follow-up to our It podcast almost 2 years ago. I'm your host, Pappy, recording from Louisville, Colorado. Let's introduce our other hosts. Let's say who you are, where you're recording from, and what your relationship is with the It franchise at this point. Did you like the first movie? Have you seen the miniseries? Have you read the book? Etc. Let's start with special guest Kory from Big Dumb Movie. Hey, Kory, welcome back. Kylo Ren memes.
Hey, thanks for having me. My name's Kory. I'm recording from Simi Valley, California.
Oh, nice.
And let's see. I was a big fan of the It miniseries. I read the book a couple years ago as well, but I'd say that was a big movie in my childhood. I definitely liked it a lot, the miniseries that is. So I was a fan, but you know, it obviously doesn't hold up very well, and the second part of it is basically unwatchable. So there's that.
How do you feel I know I also read the book a couple years ago. I don't remember a lot of it, but how do you feel about the child orgy not making an appearance in It Chapter 2? I know Brett would have been disappointed, but how did you feel about it?
You know, some things are best left in the cocaine-induced books of Stephen King and not on screen. That's definitely one of them.
All right, well, next up, Pat, PK, a normal superhero correspondent, but coming on for It. Give us your info.
Oh, all right. So my past is I remember being terrified of the cover art as a child, and
of the book or of the
miniseries.
Okay.
Seeing Tim Curry up there. I loved the part one from like 2 years ago. Saw it in when I was living out in LA. I'm in South Bend, Indiana now. Saw it at the Hollywood ArcLight, packed theater. It was freaking awesome. So I went and tried to read the book, but it was just way too long. Even had the audiobook, and it's like 44 hours long. So I loved the part one. I was pretty excited for this one, and yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Well, not only was the book long, this movie's pretty fucking long too. But we'll talk about that. But Stevie, you just got out of the super long movie.
I just got out of it. That was a super long movie. But, I mean, the good news is it didn't feel as long as Avengers did, so there's that.
Whoa.
But, yeah, Avengers felt super long.
Easy there. You got your superhero correspondent here.
I know, it just felt so damn long. It's the only gripe with that movie. This is Stevie recording from Elkhart. I saw like the miniseries as a kid, and it absolutely terrified me. I don't know why. I tried watching it a few years ago before the part one came out, and I was like, I don't have any idea why I was scared of this miniseries or Pennywise, because it just doesn't hold up as much as I love Tim Curry. But yeah, I mean, I would like to read the books. I love Stephen King as an author. It's just kind of with you guys. That book seems really thick and really daunting.
It goes into way too much detail.
What's your favorite Stephen King book?
My favorite Stephen King book? Probably Revival. That came out like in 2013, 2014, I think.
Such a hipster pick. I like it.
What do you mean it's a hipster pick? I mean, it has a decent ending.
Well, that's a funny that you bring that up because, okay, as a Stephen King fan, Stevie, let's get into it. How did you feel about Bill, like the writer, and like that kind of like inside joke with Stephen King that he can't finish a book?
I didn't mind it. I mean, it was prevalent like in the first like hour and a half or so, but I mean, I think it was a kind of like a funny like tip to the hat to Stephen, especially because this is like his art that they're recreating.
Okay, so is that a common thing with Stephen King books or movies? Like a lot
110%.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was like for all his books or if that was like for it specifically.
See, I thought they were just referencing the miniseries in which the second half is just really bad.
Yeah.
But it's all his books, right? Like, that's a thing.
That's kind of like a meme that he doesn't know how to finish a story.
He'll spend like 400 pages telling you about like the town background, and then the last 50 is just nothing but nonstop action, and he has trouble ending quite a few of his books, actually.
Well, speaking of Stuttering Bill, the writer, PK, normal superhero correspondent, how do you feel about James McAvoy? Guy who's been in a couple of superhero movies that we've done on this podcast.
Who's James McAvoy? I saw Professor Xavier out there walking around with some hair. hey, I can respect both. I thought he was great. You know, I think having him as Bill was good because seeing him in Split, you know, going through all those different personalities, like he can handle the stuttering like really well. So I thought that was cool, and seeing his battle of guilt, trying to get over feeling guilty of the death of Georgie, and that whole thing play out with him, and seeing Georgie again in the same like basement, and that little kid who plays Georgie is so that line is so intense. The trailer is so good with that, but yeah, I thought James McAvoy killed it.
Yeah, he's pretty good. And I didn't really know how to go through this movie. I kind of want to start by just at least touching on all the cast members, because like that's the way. The
casting's incredible.
Well, the casting is great, but even like by the nature of the story, and Kory, I think you can attest to this too. Like this movie is very, I don't know. It's kind of like side quests for each of the characters. Like one, like not episodic, but almost just like. The narrative bounces around between the characters, and they kind of have to do a lot of the same stuff, like assemble the crew or find their like little MacGuffin thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Speaking of the cast, there's something I wanted to touch on because I actually noticed this, and I might be the only person that did. When we're getting introduced to them and we get Ben's part, it shows like a room and there's like a board meeting going on, and you see it like an overweight guy, and you think it's Ben. But Ben is actually Skyping in. The guy that is the overweight guy that you are misdirected on, that is you think is Ben, is the actor that played young Ben in the miniseries.
What?
Any of you guys catch that?
Really?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I watched that a lot. So
you just recognize his face.
Awesome. I know that face. If I saw that guy on the street,
I know that guy.
Well, what did you, Stevie? We talked about this before the podcast, but Kory, what did you think of Ben's glam up? I thought it was a little bit too much, to be honest.
I think his character is that he's an attractive man that likes Bev. Mm-hmm. Now he's got to be the most boring one of the bunch, him or Mike. There's not a lot to Ben, I don't think. I thought it was kind of funny that Pennywise was carving in his abs. I was like, damn.
His 12-pack that they didn't have to show.
He had a Kylo Ren 8-pack for sure.
Yeah. You touched on Mike too. Mike is the guy from the first movie, and then like they changed it up where he's like the one who's into the library and looking up stuff on the town in the book, but they gave that to Ben in chapter 1. But now he's the guy who's cool with like the native people of Maine, and that's how he finds out about all that stuff. Is that in the movie, or is that in the book, Kory? I forget.
The way I remember it in the book is they don't actually interact with Native Americans, but the kids do a lot of reading on the subject of like demons, and they're trying to figure out a way to beat Pennywise. They do have a semi-Native American type ritual where they they go into their little clubhouse, which is underground, and they all like inhale smoke, and like one of them hallucinates, and that's how they come up with where Pennywise came from. And they do a little bit more reading on the ritual of Chud, which is another like, I believe it's a Native American thing they found in a book. So that's the way I remember it. I might be missing something on that, but.
So was he the town crazy in the book? In fact, that's how he came off in this movie. It was like, oh, Mike, the town crazy person.
I think there was hints of that.
He worked at a library, and like his parents had a way cooler backstory in the book too, if I remember. Like they were in some like all-black speakeasy or something, and it got like burned down, I think, or set on fire. But that was also part of like a Pennywise thing. And this one, in like his whole parents' backstory is kind of like brushed over with like a newspaper clipping. I don't even remember what it said. Or why they got killed. Speaking of, Stevie, how did you feel about the opening part? The very opening scene. I know there's some more characters you have to touch on, but like a lot of people are saying that was a little bit too over the top or violent.
I believe that scene was from the book, though.
It definitely was.
It's the very first chapter.
Yeah.
Dude, this is a long movie. I forget. What was the first scene? Even though I'm just fresh off it. What was the first scene?
The hate crime.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit much. I mean, I don't think they had to show, like, especially, like, I understand it's 2016, but, like, I'd have to think Maine is a little more progressive at this point than just townspeople going up to kill gay people over, you know, a night of the carnival.
I think that's part of it, though. It's kind of like, you know, it shows it's not just the town itself that's fucked up. It's like the people that live there are also really fucked up, you know?
I mean, it was pretty gruesome to watch, especially when that dude's just getting his head bashed in. But I did find, like, the Pennywise reveal pretty terrifying when he just eats his heart, like, right in front of that dude.
That was pretty awesome.
It was pretty awesome, but you're right. It was a tad over the top and shocking.
I mean, the reason that I say that is that from a tone perspective, I had some problems with this movie. I feel like it was a little bit all over the place. Like, we've talked about this in a lot of other movies, that some of, like, the dramatic scenes are undercut by, like, forced jokes, which a lot of them come from Bill Hader, who I think gave a pretty good performance as Richie. We alluded to him in the opening spoilers being gay, but Kory, what'd you think of him in this movie?
I think he was one of the bright spots of the movie. The comedy in the film is something I liked a lot. You know, he's the primary comedic relief, so he delivers a lot of it. There's a part that we'll probably talk about later on with involving 3 doors that I liked a lot.
Oh, no, go ahead. If you remember that scene, let's go ahead and break it down.
Okay, so the way I remember it is it's Eddie and Bill, and they're running from Pennywise, and this is deep into the very long final act. And they're kind of having a illusionary battle of sorts with Pennywise, and they're running from something, and they stop at a dead end in which there's 3 doors. One of them is not scary at all, one of them is scary, and one of them is very scary. They all have these labels on them. And it's just kind of funny when they're trying to work out which one to go through. Like, should we go through not scary at all? Or, no, that's too obvious. We should go through the very scary one. But eventually they land on the not scary at all. And when they open the door, they see a little very cute Pomeranian dog sitting there. This dog has papers, I assume, right? Pomeranian. Anyway, they see the dog, and I don't know if this happened for you guys, but they say sit, and it does sit, and everyone in my theater said, "Aw."
Yep. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Yes, that happened in my theater.
It was great. I mean, until the dog transforms into, like, a monstrous beast, but, you know.
You talked about Eddie there. I thought, how did I say his last name? James Ransone?
Something like that.
I thought he was awesome in this movie. He was cracking me up. But I do want to talk about one of the most bizarre editing choices I've seen in a movie, especially for this podcast, since Carrie, when that one scene was sped up. And that was the Angel of the Morning puke scene. Does anybody remember that?
It did seem to come out of left field.
It was so random.
And it didn't seem to hold a very big purpose, especially because it wasn't like a callback to anything.
And
it was just
cut
kind of out
really
of nowhere.
quick, too.
That's like an edit I would make, you know? Like, I would take this movie, and I would edit that particular song into that moment as a joke.
It felt like a Deadpool joke, or like, I don't know, I just didn't like, or a Family Guy joke. Like, there's nothing else in this whole franchise of 2 movies like that at all. And it didn't puke everywhere.
But speaking of the editing real quick, so this movie had some super freaking cool transitions. There was one from, I think it was, I can't remember what character it was going from, but it was from that character to Stanley. And it was like
with the puzzles?
And then it zooms in, and it turns into going into a puzzle. And that was so fucking cool. And then there was another one, I think, with like Eddie, and it showed him as like the adult Eddie getting his prescription. Then it faded in with the little kid walking behind him. Then it like matched up perfectly with his face. That was so cool.
Oh yeah.
But I love like filmmaking, so I was like, every time I saw something like that, I was like, oh, so cool.
Stevie, we talked about its length in a little bit already, but like this is the first movie since A Bug's Life where I took a bathroom break in the history of going to movies.
Why'd you take a bathroom
break? I took
break?
it when they would go back to the house.
I wasn't bored at all during
real
this
quick.
movie.
I mean, it was a super quick bathroom break. I ran, but I don't know. I really had to go. But how did you feel? We talked a little bit about the kid cast there, or the cast of kids making some flashbacks. I mean, is there any part of this movie that you would cut, Stevie, or anybody else? Like, or was the length justified?
I would have cut out like the second or third kiss that Beverly and Bill had at the bottom of the staircase. I feel like that could have been cut. as well as I'm trying to think of a few other parts. There were a few other parts that seemed to kind of drag. They just could have transitioned it differently. But I mean, as far as like whole scenes or anything, I thought it all just kind of blended well.
Honestly, if it wasn't
pretty
for
well.
fan service, I think the Stephen King bike shop scene could go. To be honest,
Yeah.
because it's just them talking about the shitty endings of the book.
I mean, you could literally achieve the same effect by having like Bill walking outside the bike shop, seeing his bike, and then the next cut is him riding it. You know what I mean? And that saves
Exactly.
5 or 10 minutes.
I don't know. I
right
kind of like the idea that, like, after years and years of abusing cocaine, Stephen King has to work at an antique shop.
there. Dude, Stephen King
Tries to
is
sell his
so
books.
rich, though. He's like a billionaire, isn't he? Or is he close?
Oh shit! I didn't know.
Someone.
Probably.
I mean, he pumps out a book a week. He has to be making close to $1 billion
I'm
at
going
this
to Google
point.
his net worth here in a second. But PK, I mentioned how some of the parts are repetitive, but like the gang, we assemble the crew. We have the scene at the Chinese shop, but then the gang has to go get like a token of something that they remember or something like that, something that they need to destroy in the ritual of Chud. Did you have any of those scenes that stood out to you? And there's one more cast member we haven't talked about too, Beverly Marsh, Jessica Chastain. But
Well, I could talk about that one
Yeah.
because
go for it.
the giant old lady's titties were probably the scariest thing in the whole movie.
Bags.
But yeah, I mean, Jessica Chastain, it was funny because I actually watched Dark Phoenix the morning I went to see this. So like James McAvoy and Jessica Chastain both, but she was great. But I think the Bill Hader scene was the most memorable, with just because it was like broad daylight and you see giant Paul Bunyan come out of nowhere. And I watched an interview where director Andy Muschietti or whatever, he said that he was on the fence about putting that in there, and then Stephen King he said he specifically wanted that to be in there, so I thought that was kind of cool. But did you guys notice like the de-aging of the kids?
No.
I did at parts, yeah. There was one part when I noticed it in Eddie. I was looking for it too, but
I didn't
pretty
know about it
seamless.
going into it, and I noticed it in like the clubhouse where they're all like underground. I was like, man, Ben, his face looks kind of weird and his voice sounded weird. And then
That and the ADR didn't match up very well.
Going back, they de-aged like Mike and or not Mike, that's Stranger Things, Richie and like the kids a lot, and they kind of like changed the pitch of their voices because they grew so much between the movies. But it wasn't too noticeable, but there was, for a second there, I was like, wait a minute, something's off.
Pappy, you were talking a minute ago about the introduction of Bev. And I mean, we didn't touch on it too much, but you know, she lives with her husband and they have this big estate. They have a business and all that. Did you guys notice that big, ostentatious like portrait they have of Bev and her husband?
Yeah.
It looks like fucking like Vigo the Carpathian or something, you know? That thing really caught my eye.
That and her like Rolodex of shoes, I thought were pretty memorable.
Pretty fancy,
Yeah.
Bev.
Did you like that scene with the Paul Bunyan? Because Kory, because that's from the book, but to me, that was just, I didn't like the CGI actually in that scene.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't huge into it either. It was just like, it stood out to me for sure.
Yeah.
In this movie, there's a few scenes that I think are effectively scary, and then there's a few that I think are stupid. That's one of the ones in the stupid category for me.
Which ones did you think were scary?
Yeah.
Well, there's a really good scene at a Little League game where a little girl, she sees a firefly and she's sitting on the bleachers with her family and she kind of like chases it away and she goes under the bleachers to this little dark corner, and of course Pennywise is down there. And this scene, I think, builds up a lot of tension, and it ends with like a really violent moment.
It's like the Georgie scene on steroids.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just had a bone to pick with that scene because, like, do you guys have the Nuvi commercials before your movies with Maria
Sometimes,
Menounos?
yeah. Yeah, subscribe to your newsletter.
Yeah, they had a like a Nuvi arcade game special for it, but it was literally that scene, including the exact like jump scare with Pennywise's hands like coming shut. You know what I mean? Like after she walks up to it. So like. They spoiled that scene right before the movie started in a fucking Nuvi arcade ad. I was so pissed.
Oh, wow.
Is that scene in the book?
I don't think so.
I don't remember that scene.
Oh.
Another scene I thought was effectively scary actually was the Bill in the funhouse scene. Any guys remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and that's another one they ruined in the trailer. But they drew it out more in the movie, which I thought was cool, with the whole head banging across the glass. And the end of it was really cool after you just see him bite the kid and a blood spray, and then like the lighting in the mirror house changes and you just see his reflection. That was really cool too.
Yeah, when I saw the trailer, I thought for sure that Bill was going to save that kid. And the fact that he ended up not saving him and the kid died a pretty violent and sudden death was intense, man. They don't hold back in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they don't show Pennywise like too much besides his final form, but yeah, when he's on there, he's pretty brutal.
Well, speaking of his final form, we tossed around a spoiler about him being a gazebo in the final scene. But what, Stevie, you just came off a 3-hour movie. What'd you think about like the very last act, like the conclusion, and then the denouement with what's his name, who we haven't talked about, Stanley, sending a suicide postcard to the guys?
Well, I love the last scene in like the giant cavern, especially when Pennywise is a giant spider or whatever he is, because I hate anything with legs that crawl, especially when Stanley's head did like the thing from John Carpenter creepy. And grew all the spider legs and started crawling around. And you're right, there were some like deadpan, like comedic moments, especially when Richie looks in the fridge and sees him and he goes, "Oh, it's just Stan." Like, I have to laugh at little stuff like that but I did like the big kind of final boss showdown at the end, especially when he's huge and chasing me around like that, whatever that cavern was. Because it was pretty intense and quite scary, especially with the lighting effects that they did. But the only thing I didn't like was how CGI'd Pennywise was, I guess, just for the fact that it kind of took me out of it, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you there, man.
I mean, it was a lot of CGI.
Yeah.
A lot of.
What do you think, Pappy?
Oh, I didn't like the last scene at all. I didn't think it was very scary. I mean, I thought the CGI was a little bit silly, like, and when Richie is getting like lifted up by like the death ray of Pennywise's mouth or whatever. I wasn't impressed with it. But
I loved that part though where he just goes from full on yippee-ki-yay mother and he just drops. Oh, that's such good acting by Bill Hader.
Yeah, me too. I really like the sound effect too, like you just mimicked. But yeah, that part was kind of intense for me. I thought that moment was good, at least.
So in the book, what do you see with the deadlights?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
Pappy, you got anything?
No, I don't remember either. I read it 2 years ago. I thought it is a spider.
Well, apparently Beverly sees everybody die when she sees it in the first movie.
I know that when they do the ritual of Chud, it's a battle of wills, and it's kind of like it is in the movie. It's a lot of like illusions of them like kind of like flying through space. I remember some of that, but I don't remember exactly what the deadlights do.
What about the letter from the grave from Stan? Did that guy hit you in the feels at all?
I thought the music was pretty good during that scene. It was like this like optimistic yet kind of sad music, but I thought it was a strange note. It had a lot of endings, and it kept going when I thought it was going to end.
Yeah.
I liked it. I mean, I think what got me more in the feels was Bill Hader when he started crying when they were on the quarry or whatever. Because do you guys watch Barry on HBO?
Yes.
Mm-mm.
Anybody listening to this, after this episode, go watch Barry. It's incredible. It's probably the best show on TV right now. But like going into it, they were talking about Bill Hader having an Oscar-worthy performance. I was like, that's old news. He's had Emmy-worthy performances in Barry, dude. This dude's incredible. But I thought I kind of related the ending to Avengers Endgame because it was weird, like getting in your feels at the end of a movie about a clown or a child-eating clown, like. But the whole letter thing, that kind of reminded me of Stranger Things, too, with... Spoiler alert. Have you guys seen Stranger Things, Season 3?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With the whole Hopper, how after he, quote-unquote, dies, he reads this letter, and it shows everybody moving on. It's kind of like the same deal, but I thought it was good.
Well, I mean, it reminds me a lot of Avengers Endgame, too, in the sense that it's like kind of closing out a big franchise. This made a shit ton of money, like Endgame did. I'm looking at like $90 million for an opening weekend. So not as much as the first, but still pretty good for Warner Brothers. Also, like Avengers Endgame, I mean, it's just a long and epic movie, and we skipped over a lot of scenes. But before we get into yes or no's, are there any scenes that you guys want to bring up or talk about?
I wanted to hear what Stevie thinks about Henry Bowers being, like his moments in the film.
We didn't even talk about him.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like he wasn't like a super effective part of the movie at all. It's like they kind of gave him this grand entrance, like, okay, he's going to be a big part now. And literally 30 minutes later, he has a knife in his head and he's done.
Tomahawk.
Yeah, I didn't understand, like, if they were going to use him in that way, why even include him besides for jump scares and comedic effects?
And he was getting driven around by a dead guy. That was kind of weird.
Yeah, and they never brought up the dead guy again. It just seems like, okay, either go all in or don't go at all for the fact that, like, they sparingly used him and he really wasn't effective at all outside of a jump scare. Like, that I didn't like about this movie.
Yeah, Henry Bowers.
I mean, that's kind of one
nerfed.
thing I liked about, like, kind of like even the miniseries when he's talking to the moon. It's like at least it was somewhat interesting and he had a bigger role to play.
Kory, you're a big fan of the miniseries. You saying Henry Bowers was nerfed compared to that?
Well, not compared to the old Henry Bowers in the miniseries, but definitely compared to young Henry Bowers. Young Henry Bowers is like a very threatening force. He's a psychopath. Old Henry Bowers is like just like a crazy old man that you can just like kind of like, you know, push away. He's yeah, I thought he was not good.
I did like that scene though when after Eddie stabs him, he goes, "Cut your mullet. It's been 30 years."
That was pretty funny.
That guy he had some good comedic timing.
Yes.
Any other?
So this.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Any other final thoughts?
I was gonna say, so this doesn't take place in 2019. It takes place in 2016, right? It shows that.
Yeah.
I don't think I think it just says 27 years later.
It shows on his memorial paper and Richie's memorial paper. It's like 1970 something to 2016.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Should have been more Pokemon Go playing if it was 2016.
It's an excellent point. Everyone's just wandering around like all these hate crimes or murders are happening, trying to catch Charizard.
It's the year of Pokemon Go.
All right. Any other final thoughts? It's a big movie. Stevie, you got anything we didn't talk about?
Trying to think here. The actor who played Eddie. Have you guys seen Sinister?
No.
I think I've seen it.
I think he's the detective or deputy in the movie Sinister, and he's really good in that. So I'm happy he got a bigger role in this movie. That's the only other thing I'll bring
The guy
up.
that played Mike was the Old Spice guy. I'm on a horse.
Oh.
That guy. Did you know that?
Whoa. Really?
Yeah.
Damn.
Go watch that commercial. You'll be like, oh shit, it is him.
Hello, ladies. Look at your man. Now back to me. Now back at your man. Now back to me. Sadly, he isn't me.
That's him.
I mean, this kind of has to do with the ending. What did you guys think about the way that they defeated Pennywise?
In the grand scheme of things, it's kind of lame, to be honest. But I mean, it's the movie's all about overcoming your fears, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I just thought it was kind of, I don't know, maybe
It was kind of a letdown.
anticlimactic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did think he looked scariest as like baby Pennywise slash
Pennywise.
Emperor Pennywise. Looked like a fucking emperor.
Little Pennywise. PK, you got anything else before we get into yes or no's?
No, I'm good.
All right, well, go ahead and give us your yes or no then for It Chapter 2.
I'll give it a yes. I think Chapter 1 as a single movie is better. But it's kind of like Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. Like, I think Infinity War is better, but as a whole, it's such a good experience and like a cool cinematic experience. So I hope we can get like an It supercut where it's just It, and they can somehow edit both chapters together. I think that would be really cool. Bill Hader, he's like my favorite guy in Hollywood right now. I'm really happy he's on the roll. So go watch Barry. And as a superhero correspondent, I can't help but say something about the Flash movie because that's Andy Muschietti's apparently next movie. I'm not a huge fan of Justice League or the guy who played the Flash, Ezra Miller or whatever, but I have faith in Muschietti to make a great and emotional Flash movie, because we deserve one, because the Flash is an awesome character.
I love the idea of
yes.
the supercut. Call it the whole bloody affair, and just have it be like a 5-hour movie.
Yes.
Let's go. I'll go next, actually. I'll bury my negative one in between some positives. So it's a soft no for me. I was entertained by portions of this movie, but like, kind of like I touched on earlier in this podcast, the narrative structure by nature is just kind of like grating. And I talked about Return of the King. It's like the ending of Return of the King, but that's like the whole movie, and each like. I think the parts where the characters are together were pretty strong, but there's just too long of like assembling the crew. Then the scene in the Chinese restaurant is awesome. Then they all split up again and have to like go get their like MacGuffin thing, and it's just like the same pattern of like going into a creepy place, jump scare, cut to the next person. That I just kind of got bored with it. So a soft no for me, but there's still a lot of good stuff in here. Stevie, why don't you go next? Fresh off the boat.
Fresh off the boat, I'll give this a solid yes. I was really entertained with this movie, especially it didn't feel its length at all, so that was nice. I also liked the comedic parts too. Because if you remember in like the first movie, there was a lot of humor in that movie too, like more humor than there was scariness. So I think it kind of structurally felt the same to me. And I'm with PK. If they make like a supercut of like 1 and 2, like I'll buy it in a heartbeat. So solid yes for me. And the acting was really strong from everybody. So
last but not least, Kory from Big Dumb Movie. Why don't you tell us also where people can find your podcast, because it's hilarious. It's my favorite movie podcast, and then give us your yes or no for It Chapter 2.
Oh. Well, thank you. Well, you can find our podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, YouTube. It's called Big Dumb Movie. If you like spoilers, check it out. But as far as my rating, I'm going to give this one a yes. I did enjoy the film, and I don't think I mind the length as much as you guys. I thought the scary moments were pretty scary for the most part. I liked the old lady, the zombie of Patrick Halstetter that's there with Henry Bowers. The human version of Pennywise I thought was pretty creepy as well, when he's like painting his face and all that. And that's cool. What this is. It's a horror movie. So to me, I kind of got to judge it on that. And was I interested in it? And I think I was. I don't like the adults as much as the kids, though. They're not as engaging for me, but it's not a big deal to me. I think it's pretty good all around. And I want to say, as a quick side note, when you guys did Chapter 1, Stevie said he bets $100 that Joel Edgerton or Jeremy Renner will be in this movie, and I didn't see him. Maybe I missed him.
Man. All right, I'll give it to my favorite charity. I'll give it to my favorite charity.
I am a spoilers historian, so...
Hey, Kory, if you ever need a superhero for superhero movie for Big Dumb Movie Podcast, you know who to call.
All right, well, we'll have you on.
But you have to talk to the spoilers
man.
Guys first. It's their call. I'm under contract. You know.
Superhero correspondent for hire. Kory, you got The Matrix coming out next, right? On Big Dumb Movie.
Yeah, a couple days from now it should be out.
All right, well, look for The Matrix coming on Big Dumb Movie. We just dropped 36th Chamber of Shaolin, and then I think the next one is First Blood, a Rambo movie from Money Mike. So thank you guys for listening. Stay tuned to those other cool podcasts coming out. And that was Spoilers.
Spoiler Man here. Our email is podcastspoilers@gmail.com. Twitter is @spoilers_pod. Our Instagram is Podcast Spoilers. It's lit. Josh Hensley from the Rutabaga wrote our theme song. Our spoilers hotline is 903-776-4507. That's 903-SPOIL07. Please support this podcast by leaving us an iTunes review. To do this, 1. Search for Movie Spoilers. 2. click on our orange Spoilers Bowl logo and scroll all the way to the bottom. 3. Leave us some stars and some words. Now you can check us out on Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, Apple, and Google Podcasts.
I was going to do this whole bit where I say like, hey, big dumb movie man here. But I was like, no, it's too stupid. I'll get made fun of. I don't want to do it.